Ciao, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. In today's Mediterranean diet recipe video, I am showcasing 3 sauces. It is so important on the Mediterranean diet to be making as much food as you can at home. So I wanted to highlight 3 incredible sauces because they are the key to making delicious, delicious meals, quick and easy and fabulous and super satisfying when you don't have a bunch of time or you kind of just want to use what you have. As long as you have a sauce, you have a complete meal, in my opinion. It really helps so much make all these basic ingredients that are so good for us so much better. The first sauce is going to be super creamy and luxurious, which is a honey nut white bean sauce or soup. It's really a soup, but I don't want you to stop just there because soup is made in such a big quantity. If you get kind of sick of eating just plain soup 2 or 3 days, I'm going to show you how to change up that soup to make it more of a sauce. Sauce number 2 is going to be a winter pesto, so the popular pesto genovese. I'm going to be switching out some of the ingredients and adding in pumpkin seeds, sage, parsley. So it's a much heartier pesto. It's great for winter produce or just winter recipes in general. And then the last sauce is more of like a glaze or like a dipping sauce or a finishing sauce. It is a harissa honey sauce, loaded with so many layers of flavor, lots of spices, that amazing harissa paste complemented with some delicious amber floral honey, a little touch of rose. So as you can see, there's lots of variations with all 3 sauces. Today I'm showcasing 3 amazing seasonal vegetables. Another huge part to the Mediterranean diet is eating seasonally, as well as eating a variety of vegetables. Sticking to the same 2 vegetables every single week is not key. You want to change up your vegetables as much as possible. In America, we try to find the fastest possible way to make food. In fact, grocery stores now, like for example Trader Joe's, are so popular because it's all this pre-made food galore. And the Mediterranean diet, unfortunately, is all about putting in a little bit of labor and love into your cooking. And I understand that's time consuming in the modern world. That's why I call it modern Mediterranean living, because I understand in the modern world it's not easy to make a homemade meal every single day. But if you make these homemade sauces, it's so much easier to make more wholesome, fresh meals throughout the week. I feel like pre-made sauces are huge. I see in every American fridge that kind of shelving of all of those sauces that last like a year or 2 in the fridge, which anything that lasts like a year or 2, it's a little bit worrisome. You want things to be as fresh as possible. The ingredient lists on those sauces, those pre-made sauces, is terrifying in my opinion. So many of these sauces, if you kind of package them up in smaller quantities, pop them in the freezer, you can pull them out within a month or 2 months whenever you're craving something, let it defrost, and then you have a sauce ready to go. But enough talking, let's just hop into recipe number 1. For sauce number 1, we are going to be making a honey nut soup. Yes, you could use butternut squash. I was just in the grocery store the other day getting all the ingredients for this recipe video, and I saw the honey nuts, and I just think there are an abundant amount of squash varieties, and we stick to like the same 3 or 4, and I want to get out of my comfort zone with trying different types of squashes. Honey nut and butternut squash are very, very similar. Honey nut has a little bit more sweetness and a little bit more intensity of flavor. And so just to showcase how incredibly simple this is, I'm taking 3 honey nuts because that's about the equivalent to, I would say, 1 medium butternut squash. Once they get soft and caramelized, it'll be so much easier to scoop out those seeds. So I'm not gonna even worry about that right now. I just think they're so cute. If you have the extra time, once you scoop out the seeds, you can salvage them, toss them in a little bit of oil, salt and pepper, or whatever seasoning you'd like to get some toasted squash seeds. I have a bundle here of thyme and rosemary. Pairs so well. I'm gonna do 3 shallots. I love shallots because they're such a more mild, oniony flavor. Just cut them in half, just like this, and go ahead and peel them. It's really important when you cut the shallot in half to keep the stem, so that way when you roast it, it stays intact. Because if it was tiny, small pieces of shallots, they would burn way more quickly than the honey nut would. Such minimal chopping. And then you just throw everything on a sheet tray, forget about it in the oven for a little bit, and then you blend it all up, and it's that simple. The caramelization is gonna give it a bunch of flavor that it gets in the oven. Cut the top right here of the garlic head, and we're gonna roast, ooh, maybe not. Okay, that was a hard one to cut. We won't be using all of the garlic today, but it is so nice to have roasted garlic on hand. It pairs with so many autumn and winter dishes to just mash it up and add some roasted garlic into your pasta dishes or some kind of sauce or just anything on some meats. So you just take a little square of aluminum foil, put your garlic in the middle, pour a little bit of olive oil on top. Super simple, just olive oil and salt. Just massage it, make sure that olive oil really seeps into the crevices of the garlic, kind of massage the garlic, and then you just kind of wrap it up really tightly and kind of make like a little basket. I like to wrap it upwards because I don't want any olive oil dripping. Normally you'd want to put a baking tray just in case there's any olive oil spillage while it gets roasting and toasting. A way to like use less herbs or buy less herbs is get the poultry pack, because the poultry pack has thyme, rosemary, and oregano. That way you're getting a little bit less of all of them, but you probably will use all of them in your cooking, especially with so many like autumn and winter dishes. So I'm just gonna drizzle the shallots, the herbs, and the squash with some olive oil, a lot of salt, and then flip the squash so it's flesh side down. I'm gonna give everything a good massage and then flip it over. Pro tip is you actually want to put the herbs underneath all of the squash so that way they don't burn as quickly, because they're such a smaller, delicate thing compared to the shallots and the squash. So something I like to do is take a few sprigs and kind of put it on top of the squash like this and then flip it over. So that way the squash is getting a lot of that flavor embedded. So we got the thyme, and then you just kind of flip it over with the thyme on there. Just pop it on a sheet tray with everything else. I'm just really looking for when the skin starts to wrinkle and kind of divot a little bit, and that means that it's super soft and caramelized on the bottom. So into the oven it goes. While we wait for the squash in the oven, let's talk about the other things going into the sauce. A quart of some delicious vegetable broth. I mean, if you have chicken broth, use chicken broth. It's just so far a very vegetable, almost vegan recipe. So depends on your preferences. Absolutely every single one of my recipes changes upon your preferences. They're so versatile. There are so many substitutes for almost all my recipes, so use what you want. I boiled 1 quart, so 4 cups of water, and I added in, you can probably see it's like sunk a little bit to the bottom, some bouillon. I am so obsessed with bouillon or just any kind of vegetable broth concentrate. It's a secret that my nonna uses so much in her cooking. It just adds loads and loads of flavor. It's just easy to keep a jar of it in your fridge and not have to buy these quarts of broth. I would love to make a stock or a broth for one of my future recipe videos, so let me know if that's something you're interested in. It's a great way to use up so many scraps. And then I also have 1 can of drained, rinsed cannellini beans. Cannellini beans are perfect for this recipe because they blend so well. They're super soft and creamy bean, and they're slightly nutty, but they don't have a whole ton of flavor, so they're very mellow. What the cannellini beans are gonna do is 1, add protein and fiber and just a bunch of nutrients to this dish. Adds such a thick creaminess to it without any dairy. I have let the honey nut, shallots, herbs, and garlic sit for about 20 minutes because otherwise it would just be too piping hot to handle. And I'm just gonna flip them over, and you can see they're super duper soft, sweet and delicious. I'm gonna take off the herbs, put them off to the side for now. I'm gonna get a little trash bowl, and because we roasted it, it's so simple. You just take the spoon lightly. This way it comes out so simply. And then in your high-speed blender, we are gonna add the rest of the flesh. So you just scoop it, and it's so soft. Want to scrape every last bit. The skin is a little bit thin, so it definitely breaks apart. In the blender, I have all of the scraped honey nut squash, the shallots, I removed the stems and any of the super crusty exterior, and all of the herbs. So easy. Either way you pull on woodsy herbs, that stem, because they're soft and roasted, they come right off. You will get a little bit of stem try your best to get rid of any stems, but just a few stems here and there, especially because the thyme is so tiny, will happen. But because we're blending this up, it'll be perfectly fine. I have my roasted garlic here that I cleaned up. I got all of the cloves out of the big head of the roasted garlic. I'm only gonna use one, maybe two, because I'm not trying to make this a garlic soup. I'm just trying to give it some roasted, sweet, aromatic flavor, like the shallots, the herbs, the garlic. What you can do is either get your high-speed blender and blend all of the rest of the cloves with some olive oil, and then you have some roasted garlic olive oil, or you can just submerge the cloves in olive oil, keep them in the fridge. You can always add more garlic. You can't take it away. I'm gonna put one big one in. The can of cannellini beans. I'm gonna start out with just 2 right now, cups of broth, and then slowly add in more and more. We will taste for salt as we go, but everything is really well seasoned, minus the cannellini beans, so it doesn't really need salt. It has so much salt in the broth as well. I have the absolutely gorgeous honey nut squash white bean soup. It blended so perfectly. So creamy, so thick. Perfect amount of sweet squash goodness, and it is super satisfying, and it feels really, really luxurious for how light it really is. This is so cozy. I wanted to keep this super simple and really just taste the squash, the herbs and the garlic and the shallots, especially because I have so many variations I want to make with this soup. But if you're feeling like coating the squash in some spices before it goes to roast, cumin, coriander, some cinnamon, some cloves, some cardamom, that would be absolutely delicious. And then you could even top it with some seasoned roasted pumpkin seeds. Like you could roast your own pumpkin seeds with those spices. Sky's the limit. This is so delicious. Let's move on to recipe number 2. Recipe number 2 is going to be highlighting the winter pesto, but before we talk about the winter pesto, let's prep the cauliflower. Cauliflower steak, to be exact. Not that this is steak or a replacement for steak. It's just a really fun way to cook cauliflower. So you just cut it down the middle because it is cauliflower season. Then you get these 2 really big halves. You want to pick a bigger cauliflower for this. Kind of pull off the green stems at the bottom. You really won't be needing that. And then from each half, you get 1 good steak, about 1 inch thick. And create a nice clean stem. You have your cauliflower steak. I took the extra cauliflower ends and made a bunch of little florets that we're gonna roast at the same time. And you're kind of asking yourself, like, Caroline, what's the point of this? Well, I don't know. I just feel like it's really fun to make cauliflower steaks, but you could just do this with all your cauliflower. This one can be for meal prep. This can be enjoyed maybe the night of for a little more fun in the moment entree kind of thing. And the flavoring that I'm gonna use that I feel pairs so well with the winter pesto is this brown butter. So last year I made a recipe video with a sage brown butter. This year, I upped that brown butter because it was just calling out to me. So I made a salted maple sage brown butter. It is absolutely incredible, and it's going to be coming soon. The final recipe will be shared soon. But I'm just going to add like 2 tablespoons of this incredible butter to a giant saute pan and let it get nice and warm, and then just sear each side of the cauliflower and then finish it off in the oven. And then when it goes to finish off in the oven, I'm gonna add also the rest of the florets on a different sheet tray so they can bake at the same time. I have pulled the cauliflower out of the oven. It is gonna cool for a few minutes, and I'm gonna talk about the winter pesto. This pesto is loaded with parsley and sage, 2 very strong, very flavorful herbs. And then I also did pepitas or pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are incredible for us and so loaded with protein, and I just feel like it was so fitting to put pumpkin seeds in a winter pesto. But you could do hazelnuts, walnuts, you could do the traditional pine nuts. Even almonds would be really great in this pesto. I did garlic and Parmesan. Nutritional yeast is such a great substitute for Parmesan if you are dairy-free. It is kind of a cheesy taste to it, and it adds that like salty, cheesy flavor that is so good about Parmesan, and a little bit of lemon to balance everything out. I like mine thicker and chunky, but you can definitely add have it in this big jar, but if you were to portion it out into little like freezer safe jars, I've even seen people do ice cubes of pesto, which I think is genius. If you just like pour the pesto into an ice cube maker, and then you have these cubes of pesto, whether you want to add it into pasta, whether you want to defrost it and use it on a sandwich the next day or toast the next day. It's so much better when it's made at home because you're using real extra virgin high quality olive oil, no sunflower oil, no unnecessary oils go into it. Use up the herbs that you've got. If you don't have sage, if you don't like sage, but you like all the other ingredients kind of going into this, you could use just regular basil. So I'm just gonna drizzle this all over the delicious, sweet, nutty, roasted, caramelized cauliflower steak. We have the buttery, super soft, falling apart, salted maple, brown butter, sage, roasted cauliflower steak with a winter pesto. So good. That pesto. The cauliflower is roasted and has that slightly sage, mapley, nutty flavor. And then that pesto is so refreshing. It's a little salty from the Parmesan. The sage and the pumpkin seeds totally make this pesto absolutely, utterly incredible. You have to try this. It is just a fantastic way of getting more veggies in, and it's absolutely amazing. I think I have to finish this and then we can move on to recipe number 3. Amazing. For the third and final recipe, I'm focusing on the harissa honey glaze. So I thought this would pair great today with mushrooms. Mushrooms are so meaty, and I specifically cut all of these mushrooms kind of thick and bigger and chunkier, so they're kind of more of a really good bite, because when mushrooms cook, they shrink a lot. And I love crispy seared mushrooms. So today we're just gonna do it super, super simple. In a large saute pan, I'm gonna heat it up over medium heat, and I am using avocado oil. I want to get them searing on such a high heat so I get that nice crusty exterior, but they're still pretty al dente in the center. And as much as I love olive oil, I definitely never want to burn it and cook really, really high heat with olive oil, so that's why avocado oil is great. It's my favorite neutral oil, so whether you're baking or using it for more of really high heat temperature cooking, avocado oil is it. I'm just trying to like let the ingredients shine, so I really just want to taste mushroom. You taste the actual vegetable in the Mediterranean. Like the Mediterranean, you're meant to taste that mushroomy flavor. So some would say like, oh, you're just searing it in avocado oil, like where's all the flavor to cook it? Yes, I have the sauce to top it off with flavor, but I'm really trying to just get that seared, delicious, mushroomy flavor, and that's why I chose a variety of mushrooms. So I'm just going to sear the mushrooms in the avocado oil, and once they are golden brown and crispy, then you salt them, because mushrooms are a sponge. If you salt mushrooms, they'll release a bunch of water. So while I wait for the mushrooms to cool, let's talk about the honey harissa sauce. The two main components are in the title, harissa and honey. I love harissa. It is a spicy chili paste, absolutely delicious. And I paired it with really sweet floral syrupy honey. So the combination of the two is incredible. Spicy sweet is always a crowd favorite. And then I amped up a ton of the flavor with adding za'atar, as well as cumin, coriander, rose water, which complements the florally honey so well, and the spicy harissa. The rose is a great addition. You barely taste it. I only added in like a teaspoon, maybe like a teaspoon and a half, but just a tiny splash of rose water just to add layers and layers of flavor into this. A little bit of olive oil to help thin it out so it's a more like glazy, saucy consistency. Some salt, smoked paprika. So this is a delicious glazing sauce or dip. It can go on so many things, whether you want to put it on cheese, maybe a whipped feta. Later in the video, I'll show you how it goes great on meats or fish. It could also be great on beans or lentils or on toast. All right, so I'm gonna plate up the mushrooms and drizzle on some delicious harissa honey. It smells unreal. Honey harissa hitting the hot mushrooms. So much of the cumin, the coriander, the za'atar. I am stoked to try this, because I don't like spicy food, but I love this. So spicy, but it complemented so much by the sweetness. All those spices, This is such a cozy, delicious dish. It is a great way to use mushrooms. Absolutely fabulous. You can barely taste the rose. It just gives it a nice like floral essence. The mushrooms are chewy and meaty. The lime helps so much with the spiciness. I think the lime is really helping cut through all the spices and literal spiciness. So I love the lime juice and the lime zest. A little bit of cilantro on top for some freshness. Absolutely unreal. I always talk about all the different variations you can make, so here are some examples. I made a cheesy honey nut risotto with crispy prosciutto and even more like sauteed crispy squash on top. It's really simple to make. It's like kind of following the same way you would make any risotto, but at first I started with crisping up the prosciutto in a really large deep saucepan, frying the sage in some butter and like kind of scraping up any of the residual kind of prosciutto flavor on the bottom of the pan, toasting the arborio rice and cooking it similar to, like I said, how you'd cook any risotto until it was like 70% cooked. So I drop in the warmed up vegetable broth every like 5 or 10 minutes or so until most of it was absorbed, and then I added in about 2 or 3 cups of that delicious honey nut squash soup, and it really infused into the arborio rice and it gave it such a creamy, luxurious feel, and it took away a bunch of work of having to really prep the risotto with a ton of flavor or cook the risotto with a ton of flavor. And then to add some cheesiness and goodness, I did about, I think, half a cup of whole milk mozzarella and lots of Parmesan, and then like I said, I topped it with crispy prosciutto, and then I also sauteed some leftover honey nut squash. I just cubed it up while it was still raw and then sauteed it in some of the leftover salted maple sage brown butter, which, like I said, I can't wait to release that. I will be releasing that recipe very soon. But other things you could do, like I said, you could use it as like a pasta sauce. I'm just kind of thinking of like ways you could use such a creamy sauce. So pasta sauce would work really well. Another very fun kind of holiday idea would be to add the soup back into a pot and add tons and tons of cheese just to the soup, and you could kind of use it as a honey nut squash fondue. Like I said, sky's the limit. Get creative. This is just all inspiration to do with what you want. And on to the next variation. For the second variation, I used the winter pesto to flavor meatballs. It is such an easy thing to do. If I used ground turkey, but you can use a mix of like ground beef and veal or pork or whatever your favorite kind of meatball base is. But I used ground turkey, about a half a cup of the pesto, so it's a great way to use up a lot of the pesto. Breadcrumbs, some leftover of that roasted garlic from the soup, so that's a great way to use up the roasted garlic as well. Some chili flakes for a little bit of kick, an egg to bind it all together, and then a little bit of lemon juice and salt to bring out all those flavors. And you just mix it up very lightly. You do not want to ever overwork the meat when you're making meatballs. This could be also made as hamburgers if you wanted to take out like the breadcrumbs and the egg and just mix all the other flavors up and shape up some hamburgers. So kind of sky's the limit here too as well. I just feel like pesto is a great way to like coat some protein, coat grains, coat some beans. Pesto, I think you guys can totally come up with about a million ways too to use pesto. Pesto is used in so many different ways. And to make these meatballs even more decadent, I had leftover mozzarella from making the variation of the honey nut squash risotto. So I used the rest of the mozzarella and cubed it up and stuffed it in the middle of the turkey meatballs to make it more fun, more decadent. I mean, you're rolling them anyways, might as well kind of level them up where you can. And then I used even more pesto on top to top these meatballs, and I love to just eat them by themselves with veggies on the side, but you could obviously put them on pasta or any of your favorite things, and they're just a really fun way to use up that leftover pesto. And then this is also a great thing to meal prep. You can keep them in the freezer and kind of just warm them up when you want them. So just so many ideas upon ideas, and on to the next and last variation. For the last variation, I'm using up that honey harissa glaze, and one of my favorite ways to have used it was with fish, and I just glazed a simple piece of halibut. You could use salmon or any type of fish or seafood, really. It would work great as a glaze. You just want to make sure to pat the seafood or any protein choice for that matter really dry so that the glaze sticks really well to that protein source. Also, don't use parchment paper in the oven at high heat because we're about to broil this fish. Always use aluminum foil. Like I said, the glaze has so much like sugary
goodness in it that it gets pretty sticky. So for easy cleanup, I definitely recommend aluminum foil. And I always like to broil my fish so that way it gets a nice crusty exterior and it gets soft and cooked all the way through, but not overcooked. You could do this with any protein source, like just anything that needs like a delicious glaze. I guess fish is a really easy option, but anything that you'd maybe want to grill, you can marinate it in this sauce. This is a great sauce for marinating as well. It does so well because it has so much flavor jam-packed in it. And I just really hope you enjoyed these variations. Let me know in the comments below if you can think of a variation as well.
Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this recipe video. I hope you got something out of it, whether it's a single recipe within all of the recipes I feel like I shared in this video, or if it's just more facts about the Mediterranean diet, things to help you with your Mediterranean lifestyle journey. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe because I share lots and lots of things on the modern Mediterranean lifestyle, especially the Mediterranean diet. I will have a link to join my email list below because I am dropping something very special January 1st. We are going to start off the new year incredible. I am going to help you guys have an amazing start to the new year, and not just a start, but a whole entire year and all the years to come, because this is a lifestyle. It's not just a diet. It's not just a phase. It is a lifestyle, and there is something that I'm creating that I hope will help you guys a lot, and I'm dropping it January 1st. So to stay up to date on when it's dropping and any kind of freebies in the process, please join my email list, which is in the description. All the recipes are in the description. Check out the description. There's lots of good stuff in the description. Hopefully I showcased enough recipes that intrigued you, and it's not so much even about the recipes, it's just inspiration to get you guys in the kitchen and cooking more of your meals and loving cooking. So that was really my goal behind all of this, and I really hope you enjoyed, and until next time, I hope you create a very zestful day. Ciao.